Hi, Mike Smith here, and in this video series I'm going to talk about the architectural overview of integrating a learning management system or a membership function within a web application content management system such as WordPress. This diagram shows a pictorial overview, and it also shows some of the objectives that we aim to achieve, and also mentions some of the tools. And before we get into this complicated diagram, we're going to look at a typical learning management system in its simplest form. So let's get started. So looking at a typical learning management system, and a lot of the principles here apply to a membership or protected content system as well. So looking at it, a user will be enrolled on a course or will become a member of some kind, and of course this could be multiple courses available and multiple membership options or levels available as well. But in effect, being enrolled or being a member means that they have access to lessons or protected content. If they are lessons, those lessons may be in a set sequence, a linear controlled sequence, or they may be able to be accessed randomly. When a member starts, generally speaking, there is some kind of welcome and to the learner, and also a notification sent out by email, and also a notification usually sent to the administrator of the web application, and perhaps the leader or instructor on that course or membership group. So something welcomes them, and also when they finish, something in the form of another email might congratulate them and then also provide notification. So generally speaking, a learning management system will have built-in functions to take care of the welcome email, graduation email, and also notifications to the system administrators or course leaders. So that's represented here in this diagram, and they simply progress through the material, what this diagram doesn't show is what happens after that, and also how they become a member or an enrolled course participant. But this is a typical learning management system or membership function. Okay, this diagram shows a little bit more sophistication in the learning management system capabilities. So previously we looked at a very simple representation of a learning management system, here we're looking at a few more features. So for example, it may be that not all of the lesson content is available to all enrolled users. So you may have some content for group A and group B, for example, and some content for all users. And then also there may be some key lesson content here represented in red, or protected content, for which there might be some need to notify the administrator or the course leader, and maybe a specific email sent to the user to help them actually complete that content or comprehend that content or access that content. So the idea here in a learning management system is that an example might be a particularly difficult lesson that we anticipate learners will have problems with, and so therefore the course leader or the administrator will want to know when they've started that lesson so that they can be proactive in helping the student, and thereby giving the student a better overall experience within the learning management system and its content. So now we are sending emails in response to events within the learning management system as the learner progresses, and those emails may go to the learner in the form of coaching and help, tailored specifically to each of these different stages, and possibly also for specific content there may be some extra care taken. So that's content control and monitoring. Group A, Group B, all groups, and then also some specific content management. And also in the top left here, I've started to think, well, in order to achieve this, we need some way of delineating people in Group A and Group B, and also some way of indicating that a particular piece of content needs special treatment. And so we're starting to think of a CRM, client or customer resource management tag-based system, which may help us do that. And I'll go into a little bit more into a little bit more detail about that in a moment. But overall, this is simply showing us that from our simple learning management system concept diagram here, we may want it to be a bit more sophisticated so that the users get a better overall experience. Right, now our learning management system and the courses here are really just part of a larger content management system. And I'm using the WordPress content management system here as an example, but the principles apply to any web application content management system. And you may notice in the top right here I've got some options for plugins and also cloud-based services to cater for the various large-scale functions. This diagram looks quite complex, and as you can see at the bottom here, our learning management system is kind of embedded. So the idea is that what happens before and after a user completes this course. How do they get onto the course, for example? What happens afterwards? Is there anything that we can do to offer more of our services and products to this user? And how did we ensure that we got them onto the system in the first place? So that's the function of the larger content management system. And I've got another video series that goes into all of this in more detail, but in a simplified form. The WordPress content management system contains content, and also in this particular case we want to sell that content, so it has an e-commerce function, and so it can give offers, and so you can think of those as products, for example. And then after products are purchased, there's some process for delivering that product, and in the case of a course, it would be just providing access to the lessons, but there may be other aspects to this as well. If a user doesn't accept that offer, then at least we capture their lead and we hold them in some kind of lead nurture process, for example a mailing list, and in order to maximize the number of people that accept our offers, maybe we could create some well-designed landing pages with good copywriting and visual designs with clear calls to actions, and so that then there are more yeses than nos. But even if there are nos, we still have a system for managing them. If they purchase our product, we have systems for delivering and then also offering further offers. And so within WordPress, which is the content management system itself, we need some tools for managing money, payments. We also might want some tools to maximize our ability to convert sales. And then we also need, because we're actually creating users within our system, particularly for a learning management system, we also need a way of managing those users. So a CRM, customer resource or customer relationship management tool is required as well, and there are a number of options for that. So basically our learning management system is one of the offers on offer in the WordPress content management system e-commerce function, and around that there's a whole ecosystem that takes care of it. So that's the bigger picture, and that's what's represented by this more complex diagram here. We're just going to focus on the learning management system, but it's important to know that it is embedded within a larger system here. Okay, so returning to our simpler diagram, not the simplest diagram, but a relatively simple diagram to visualize our learning management system. What we want to do is get our heads around what we want it to do. So obviously we want to protect content and limit that content to people who are enrolled in a course or who are given access to material via a membership function. So we want to keep track of who has content and who doesn't. We want to give people an ability to gain that content either for free or by giving us their email address, or by actually purchasing, or by graduating from one of the prerequisite courses that we might offer. And we also want to have the ability to further specify who gets to look at what, according to whether they're in Group A or Group B, for example. We also want a fairly capable and sophisticated notification system to both the administrator, course leader kinds of people, staff looking after them, and then also to the learner. At the very least, welcoming them and congratulating them, and perhaps sending them certificates of graduation at the end of their course, but then also detecting their progress through, and perhaps coaching and providing help. So this is kind of an overview of the functional requirements that we want from our learning management system. And I've gone and kind of tried to write these out in text form as well, which is what this diagram shows. Now, people who have been involved in system design to any extent will know that it's really important to capture all of the relevant requirements before designing, and certainly before building a system. And so that's what we're attempting to do here, is simply to clarify what we want our system to do, and not just the learning management system, but the learning management system within the larger system that we mentioned before, which obviously involves the sales process and potentially other offerings. So let's just go through these. Enrollment active here. This is a bit of a key extra feature, and it sits outside the learning management system. I'll go into that into a little bit more detail in a moment. But this enrollment member active is controlled by criteria. For example, it may be that you want the course to be accessed within a particular date range. And it may be related to a product purchase or a bundle of products purchased. There might be a whole lot, and group membership, for example. There might be a whole lot of criteria which determine whether an enrollment is active for a particular course. So what we don't want is a too simplistic enrollment process where, for example, they purchase a product and they automatically get enrolled. We want a bit more control over this, not just for enrollment, but also for unenrollment. So we might want a course, for example, to be simply not available for a particular period of time. And I'm thinking not just of the end of a time of active enrollment, but perhaps temporary time periods where the course simply isn't available. It could be holidays, for example. There could be a whole bunch of reasons. Another aspect, enroll and unenroll, it may be that we want the learner to do the course again. So we want to at least give ourselves the flexibility to control that. And then in addition, we may want further visibility control within a course. So an enrollment to a course doesn't necessarily mean that an enrollee can see all of the content in the course. And that's difficult for a learning management system to do by itself. So that's why we want to start thinking about a CRM which sits higher up within the architecture. That means that the learning management system course would normally simply be set to closed. Most learning management systems will have payment systems of their own, enrollment systems of their own, but in fact we don't want it to do that in this particular case because we want enrollment to be controlled by some external criteria. And that will give us complete flexibility. In addition to that, we want a sophisticated email-based notification system, which a CRM it would also be eminently suitable for, notifying various people, including admin and the learner itself themselves, and for defined events as they progress through the content as well. So most learning management systems will not necessarily have the ability to do these interim emails. And I'm not saying that we want to do it for every lesson, but we want to have the capability to do it for every lesson. Finally, because we are in the process of in the business of education, we want to not have the process finish there. We want to make further offers, and some ability to do that is required, and of course that will be outside the learning management system as well. It's also not entirely within the CRM, so we'll have to return to the idea of the sales process flow function that we briefly touched on earlier. So we're starting to get a sense now of our overall requirements and also getting a sense of what tools we might need to achieve that. And we did mention tools earlier, and we also touched earlier on the sequence and the pathway that a user may require to go through in order to become enrolled on the course, or to have the criteria for enrolling on a course. So this is a simplified diagram of the one that I showed earlier, which was the more generalized diagram for the web application itself. And of course this diagram allows products not just to correspond to courses, but any kinds of products, whether they're virtual or physical products. But because this video series is focusing on the learning management system here, I've created a slightly simplified diagram of the system within which it is embedded and the process that the customer might go through. So as you can see at the top left here, they will arrive on a landing page, and hopefully they will be compelled to go to a checkout page and in so doing buy the product. If they don't buy that product, then we at least have their contact details and we can put them on a mailing list for further offers. If they do buy the product that corresponds to the course, then there's a couple of steps here which indicates whether that enrollment is active immediately, or whether there are some other criteria that might filter, and sort of that takes care of the active enrollment. So this is the larger picture from the perspective of the learning management system. This top left part of the diagram here simply acknowledges the fact that it is a business that we are talking about here. It's a business website in the business of selling courses in this particular case. And so we need to have some systems in place to maximize conversion. And that's what these landing pages and checkout pages are there for, simplifying the purchasing process. And historically, learning management systems, whether they're a plug-in to WordPress or whether they're standalone learning management systems such as Moodle or Blackboard, have had overly complex purchasing and enrolment procedures. Moodle particularly so. And it's been a sore point for people who have tried to make a business out of selling courses. So, and even within WordPress, which is possibly more business oriented, the process of buying a product is problematic because people need to generate an account, and they're generally asked for a lot of details that are not really necessary. So these blue boxes here represents the sales and checkout flow, and there are specific tools that we use to simplify and optimize that process, and they're shown in blue here in this diagram. And that's a good point for us to talk about what tools we use to build this system. So let's talk about these tools here. You may have been able to see them in the previous parts of this video, but I'm expanding them here just to give you some idea of what is actually required to build an optimized, comprehensive learning management system within a content management system, and have it be a successful business enterprise. So let's go through these now. Now, at the bottom here is some kind of automation that will allow us to detect certain events and then trigger actions. Now, the automation here, I've listed a couple of options for in-house, in other words, within WordPress architectures. You would have Uncanny's product or WP Automator's product for automation, and that is able to do certain things that the CRM, for example, can't do or does inefficiently. Most of these larger tools here, shown in color, will have some form of automation, but the automation provided by Uncanny Automator or WP Automator, or if you're using cloud services, a service like Zapier, will kind of glue everything together and fill in the gaps in what you want to do. Okay, and then of course, because we're in the process of selling, we need some kind of e-commerce, whether that would be WooCommerce within WordPress. That's the most common tool for that, or a cloud-based service such as eJunkie, and there are others as well. But we need some way of taking payments, payment gateways, and because of the different requirements around the world and also restrictions in certain countries, WooCommerce is a good platform for this because it allows you to add multiple payment gateways, so as to make your system accessible to as many people as possible. We also obviously talked about the learning management system. Most of the time I use LearnDash within WordPress, but I've used other systems such as Sensei, and I've even built a learning management system simply using a membership function such as S2 member or WP members, or there's a lot of options here, but one of the industry leaders is LearnDash. That's within WordPress. And then outside WordPress, you have services such as Thinkific and SmartCart, which are pretty amazing products, but they are cloud services. And if you were using Thinkific, SmartCart, then you'd be gluing everything together with Zapier. And I have another set of videos which talk about whether it's a better idea to use cloud-based services or whether to try and keep everything within WordPress, for example. So going over to the left here, we have our CRM, which is primarily email based, but it may also have the capability to send SMS text messages to phones. Again, the one that I tend to use is Groundhog, which is a plugin to WordPress, but there are others as well, such as Fluent CRM, WP Fusion, And then for the cloud-based services, you also have Active Campaigns, MailChimp, which is a very commonly used product, and Thrive, which is probably the industry leader for cloud-based service, cloud-based CRMs. And they can all be integrated within WordPress, but you would need some way to glue them together, such as Zapier, for example. And then in blue is the one that we haven't really talked in detail very much, but it's the one that optimizes your conversion process. So if we go back to this really complex diagram here, you've got lead qualifying, which is your advertising, seminars, social medias, sending leads to various points in your website. Without going into too much detail, basically the idea is that once you send a lead to a landing page, you know that has cost you something to do that. Your advertising is costly. Seminars, social media advertising even costs. You know, Google based SEO also costs. That's an effort to send someone to your landing page. So what you want to do is increase your conversion rate to as high a value as possible, and to do that you need good copywriting, you need a smooth sales process. That's what these blue boxes are all about, and that is provided by tools such as cart flows or ClickFunnels, which ClickFunnels is an industry-leading cloud-based service for sales flow funnels. And the one that I use within WordPress at the moment is WP Funnels. So, one thing, by the way, this word funnel is used both in the on-page sales flow, and it's also used within CRM terminology. So there's a potential for confusion here. Funnels are used, the word funnels is used in both of these functions. But to achieve what we're trying to achieve, we basically need all of these tools. It is possible to get away with using free versions, or maybe not even using some of these tools, but you're going to get a less than optimal outcome. And that's not what we want. So some investment is required to make all this work. So there we have the architectural overview of a learning management system or membership function within a web application content management system. I've used the WordPress content management system as an example, but that gives you an overview of what we're trying to achieve typically within a business context, and how we might go about achieving that. So I hope that's been useful. If nothing else, it gives you a big picture, and perhaps raises some questions in your mind, and makes you aware of some of the issues that may come up, or the things that you may need to consider. And it's best to consider all these things at the beginning of your process rather than at some point through the build, because it'll be more efficient that way. So thanks very much for listening and watching. Oh, and by the way, apologies again for the background hum in the audio in this video. My computer's a little bit sick, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to repair it or replace it and re-record this video. But apologies for the audio quality. Thank you very much.